the Roots of the Science podcast with your girl, Anne with an E.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Root of the Science podcast with your girl, Anne with an E. Now, if you are listening and you are a subscriber on whatever platform you're using, please make sure to rate and review this podcast. It's season 2. We want to be up on the charts with the other podcasts, and this can only be done if you rate and leave a comment. And the best part is that if you leave a review, I get to read it on the show. Today's review comes from Jean-Pierre from Podchaser. His review reads as great educational podcast and introduces us to the best minds in STEM across the African continent and the globe. Find out how they reach their goals and get insight into their thought processes. Thank you so much, Jean-Pierre, for this wonderful review. If you want to leave a review, you can leave it either on Apple Podcasts or you can leave it on Spotify or on Podchaser. Please do make sure that you rate and review. Thank you. Now, going back to today's episode, my guest today is Dr. Bathabile Ramalapa from South Africa. In this episode, we learned that at a young age, her interest in science came from the realization that sciences were the force of innovation and they're the ones that develop products that could be used to solve people's problems. Bathabile takes us through her academic journey and we find out how she went on to pursue a dual PhD program in chemical and pharmaceutical sciences. She spent 2 years in Belgium and France to complete this wonderful program. We also discuss how she managed two PhDs and also the perks of traveling across Europe. Currently, Bathabile is a senior researcher at the Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, otherwise known as a CSIR. She focuses on the development of advanced drug delivery systems for drugs presenting low absorption, low bioavailability, toxicity, and overall patient non-compliance, specifically for diseases with high burden in Africa. She tells us more about this research and why it's so important. We further discuss how we can boost South Africa's biotech economy. And lastly, she candidly discusses why she's so passionate about the representation of women in STEM. Stay tuned because there's this and loads more. Let's go. Hi, Bathabile. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Anne.
I am so excited to have you, Doc, aka Doc.
Me too. I've been waiting for my turn.
Oh, it is here now. It is here. And I'm just so excited. I'm so excited. So for everybody who doesn't know you, could you please just give us a brief introduction? Where are you based? What are you currently doing, etc.?
Okay. So my name is Bathabile Ramalapa. And my mother gave me that name because she said my maternal and paternal grandparents were overjoyed when I was born. I was the first girl grandchild on my maternal side and the first grandchild on my paternal side. So currently I'm a senior researcher with the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, and I work on advanced drug delivery systems. I'm a South African Black woman. I was born in Pretoria, in Atteridgeville, in a township in the west of Pretoria. And myself and my cousins were raised by my maternal grandparents because in the days when we grew up, our parents could not afford nannies. And also that kind of help amongst the Black community was unpopular at that time. So we just went with the concept of it takes a village to raise a child. So the entire family was involved. And a lot of my upbringing and character was influenced by my maternal family, all the cousins, my aunts, my uncles. And I think my grandmother and my mother had a strong influence in the powerful woman that I am today.
And aren't you just a powerful woman, which everybody will get to hear about? But before we get onto that, you spoke about being a mom, and your mother rather, and you yourself are a mommy to a beautiful little boy. So before we get into the science, I just want to ask you, is it too soon to get him into the science? Like, is he being exposed to those sorts of things yet?
I think so. And I think sometimes, before I became a mother, if anyone had told me that by the age of 2, these little humans have already developed their own character, developed their own interests, I probably would have not believed it. But in fact, I hardly right now introduce him to anything because I've always thought he was too young. But before he turned 1, he had already started looking forward to watching the birds in our garden.
Wow.
So then I started leaving breadcrumbs in the garden to ensure that the birds visit our garden. And in fact, this is a tip I got from someone on Twitter. I was talking about my son watching birds, and they said, if you leave a lot of crumbs, a lot of birds will come. So I started doing that. And I mean, it fascinates him. I think he can even recognize when we have a new bird species because they have different colors. So I think when he's with a color that he hasn't seen before, he's like, okay, this one looks new. And we also live close to a small airport. And I think he's also into airplanes because he can catch a couple of airplanes flying very low for landing and takeoff. And we've also now started watching videos of airplanes on the internet. I know he might not understand much of it when he sees on the videos, but I try to feel whatever interest he has because I think that is important for a child his age. So I can tell that he's getting, quite interested in a few things, and I try to feel whatever he shows me that he's interested in.
That is so cute, especially about the birds. I think it's quite adorable, and also I think sometimes we don't give young children enough credit that they're able to kind of recognize these things. It's amazing how powerful the brain is, even at such a young age. And it's really cool.
That's true.
Yeah. And it's really cool that he's also into airplanes, and you'll never know. Maybe one day he might be a pilot, and then he'll be like, I used to watch airplanes with my mom. One day when he's doing his own interviews.
And I think people won't believe him. If he says to people, I used to watch airplanes at 2, they'll be like, no ways.
No, but it's these small things where it'll be embedded in the back of his brain, and it's quite beautiful that you are nurturing this and you are encouraging it. Of course, I mean, wherever his interests may lead, I'm sure you'll support it.
Yes, that's true. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So now back to you. You touched briefly that you were raised by your grandparents, and they really had a shape in terms of being the woman that you are. So I wanted to find out, in terms of the science aspect, how did you get into this field? What were some of the influences? Was it your grandparents as well?
When we were young, or let me speak on my behalf, when I was young, the only careers I knew of that I could be a medical doctor or a teacher, nurse, maybe lawyer or social worker, policeman, policewoman. So I wanted to become a medical doctor. And it was only later in high school when I took on science as a subject that I became aware of what science was and what scientists do. And I was influenced by the fact that, when they teach you science in school, they tell you that scientists innovate, and I realized, okay, the products that are developed, are developed by scientists, a lot of them. And, you could develop a product that people could use or provide a solution to a problem that people have. And sometime during my undergraduate years, it then became about my immediate community. I wanted to provide solutions to the problems that my community was facing. Sometimes, even though a need had already been met, my community might not have access to the solutions. So I then became passionate about providing African solutions to African problems. For me, science is not just about doing world-class research, but it's also about ensuring that the research that I do aligns with the needs of my community first and foremost, and then the needs of the continent, and then the rest of the world.
I love that. And it's good that is the center of the science you do, because like it's very often that these are created out there, but the people who do not even know that it's there. Number one. Number two, it's not readily available. So it's really good that was really the push factor for you. And you touched briefly about your undergrad studies, and I want us to get deeper into your academic journey, because for those who don't know, you are a doctor, like a double doctor. Like that is just wild for me, because I've just started my PhD and I'm like, hell no, would I do this twice? So may you please tell us about your journey and how that all started.
Yeah, but I think the fortunate thing for me was that I didn't have to completely do it twice. So I started my academic journey at the Tshwane University of Technology in Pretoria, and I pursued my undergraduate studies and masters in chemistry there. And so during my studies, I spent a few months in the UK at the University of Nottingham, learning how to apply my chemistry knowledge in the field of nanomedicine. And towards the end of my master's, I spent a few months in Switzerland as a fellow at the Novartis pharmaceutical company. So it was then that I started linking my chemical sciences knowledge to pharmaceutical research. Then in 2014, I was awarded a scholarship as a candidate for a dual PhD program in Europe as part of a program called the Nanopha Erasmus Mundus program. I then pursued a PhD in chemical sciences with the University of Liège in Belgium, and a PhD in pharmaceutical sciences with the University of Angers in France. So I spent roughly 2 years in each country. It was quite challenging, but I acquired a wide range of skills, specifically in biotechnology, which was an area of research that was completely new to me. It was also a character building exercise for me. I had to learn fast and work even harder to finish my project for the 2 PhDs within the 4-year time frame. For one of the PhDs, the one in pharmaceutical science in 2017, then I qualified for my PhD in chemical sciences in 2018. And, up to now, I'm still trying to publish some of the results even today. The COVID-19 pandemic lockdown helped me a little because I was able to publish 2 articles from my PhD, and I hope that I'm finishing the very last one next year. So in effect, although I qualified for both PhDs by 2018, I'm still trying to conclude some of the publications for my PhD. And I hope that next year will be the year. So that's the bright side of being a double doctor. But there's even the brighter side of it for me was the traveling. So during the PhD, as I said, I lived in 2 different countries during the course of my PhD, and I got to visit a lot of the cities in France and in Belgium. But I also got to visit some of the surrounding countries between the 2 countries, because traveling in Europe is affordable. And as a student, you even get, discounts. I think South Africa should look into this, by the way.
Yeah.
you get discounts for traveling, right? For going on a train, a plane, anything that moves, you get a discount. If you book a hotel room, sometimes you get a discount. So I traveled to places like Italy, Greece. I went to Germany, the Netherlands. And I also had a good relationship with my supervisor. And at the beginning of my PhD, I said to him, I love traveling and I wanted to travel. And we worked out a plan. So, it was like we had an informal pact that I would do, as much as I can to finish my PhD within the 4-year allocated time, both PhDs. And then I can reward you by finding some money for you to travel to conferences, in other parts of the world. So I got to travel to conferences in the United States. And, I took little vacations here and there with the money that I had. So I spent a Christmas in Thailand 1 year. So for me, the upside was also the traveling. So it was hard work. It was challenging, but there were little rewards here and there that made it worthwhile.
That is beautiful. I love that. And it sounds like a dream that you were able to, it was more than just an academic enrichment. You also got enriched culturally, socially, And it's so beautiful because you got like a whole rounded of your stay in those 4 years. And I wanted to ask you though, how you said that you did 2 years here and you did 2 years here. So did you not feel that pressure? Did you not feel a bit overwhelmed? Because usually 3-4 years to finish one PhD and another. Mm-hmm. So to compact it in just 2 years, how was that?
Yeah, it's true. If I had done one PhD, I would have probably had gotten 3 years. I mean, in some countries like Belgium, you would even get 4 years to do one PhD. But this is a program where, I think they prepare you for it. First of all, the selection process is really the critical part of it. So, and then they prepare you for what's coming ahead, the kind of pressure that, you're going to be under. But I think no matter how much I was prepared for it, it really could have never been enough. It really was overwhelming. That's why I'm saying to you that I think I would publish probably the last of my research articles for this PhD next year, which is 2021. So you can imagine this was work that was started in 2014. And I'm only looking forward to finishing off in 2021.
Wow.
So it really takes up a lot of your time. It really takes up a lot psychologically as well, physically, emotionally. So it really was overwhelming. There was a lot of pressure, but I think it's doable. I've seen that it's doable. And I think that it's something that is character building, the knowledge you get out of it, the expertise, the skills that you get out of it. For me, whenever people ask, I always tell them that I am a biotechnologist by training. So I didn't study biotechnology. I studied chemistry and I studied pharmaceutical sciences, but I had to put those two and learn along the way to be able to do research in biotechnology. And I think that's what doing this double PhD has done for me. I've learned skills that I could probably never otherwise learn if I had done one PhD. And I've also opened up my mind so much that I think I'm able to learn things much faster, to work much smarter because of the process that I've been through with doing this double PhD.
Yeah, I can imagine that you had to develop those skills. And I'm sure it's even useful for now in your day job as well, right? It gives you that.
That's sort of true. Yes, that's true. Absolutely.
Yeah. And speaking of your day job, you mentioned earlier that you are a senior scientist at CSIR, and your research focuses on the development of advanced drug delivery systems for drugs presenting low absorption, low bioavailability, toxicity, and overall patient non-compliance, specifically for diseases with a high burden in Africa. Wow, that was a mouthful, but I think just mentioning this, you can already tell that it marries what you were speaking about your pharmaceutical sciences and your biotech. So can you just tell us more about what this research is all about and some of the importance?
Yes, absolutely. So Africa has a high burden of infectious diseases such as tuberculosis, HIV, and malaria. And, the stats when it comes to the global mortality with tuberculosis, I mean, it's quite high, and most of it stemming from Africa and specifically South Africa, when it comes to tuberculosis and HIV. For TB and malaria, we know that there are treatments that exist to cure these infections. However, there has been an increasing prevalence of drug-resistant strains of both TB and malaria. And these multi-drug-resistant strains demand that we develop new routes of innovation for pharmaceutical drug discovery. And these new routes could include the development of therapies for infectious diseases with reduced drug dosage and dose frequency and shortened treatment duration. So the end goal for this would be to increase patient compliance to the treatments in order to improve the treatment outcomes and minimize occurrences of drug resistance, which later leads to mortality. So we developed drug delivery systems for existing drugs or drugs that have recently been discovered and show efficacy. So it means it's been shown that they could work, but they could not go through clinical trials due to low bioavailability or toxicity and side effects. So what bioavailability is the bioavailability of a drug means that when you take a drug, how much of it is available to do its intended purpose. So when a drug has low bioavailability, the dosage becomes high because then you have a low amount of a drug doing the work that it's intended to do. And this may lead to toxic side effects because then you have a high amount of the blood in the bloodstream that's not doing what it's intended to do and may lead to toxic side effects. So with the research that I'm involved in, we reformulate these drugs to enhance the bioavailability of the drug, which can then lead to low dosage and in most cases reduces the toxic side effects and shortens the duration of the treatment, which ultimately may improve compliance of patients to this treatment. And we have been using these strategies for infectious diseases, but of course, these strategies can also be used for non-communicable diseases such as cancer and diabetes as well. For example, a lot of cancer medication has toxic side effects. So these strategies been using for infectious diseases could be used to minimize those side effects that you have and overall improve treatment in cancer.
Wow, that's so interesting. Fascinating. I just wanted to ask you one thing. When you were speaking about patient non-compliance, what does that exactly mean?
So patient non-compliance means that's when patients don't comply to their treatment. So for an example, with tuberculosis and HIV and malaria, what you have, malaria, not so much because it's a treatment that people get for 24 to 72 hours. So with that, there might be higher compliance. But with TB and HIV, for example, TB, people have to take the treatment for 6 months.
Yeah.
And the treatment that you take every day for those 6 months. And as I said, sometimes the drug have toxic side effects. Like, for example, there's a drug called rifampicin that people take for TB, and some people have reported that they get orange urine when they use it, or when their tears come out, they are orange. Wow. It could be in all cases, but in some cases. And that's when people, stop taking the drugs, or they feel better in some instances. After two months of taking the drugs, they start feeling better, but the bacteria is not completely gone. You need to take the treatment for 6 months for you to be able to kill the pathogen. But if you only take it for 2 months and you stop the treatment, then that's when multi-drug resistant TB can then develop, which is difficult to treat. And that's why we have such a high mortality with TB in South Africa. So patient compliance, going back to it, just simply means when patients do not comply to the treatment. Either they take it for a short duration of time, or they take it some days and don't take it on some days.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, that when somebody feels better, and there's also a little bit of stigma behind it with some of these medication where a person, doesn't want to. So it's really, really, really important, the work that you guys are doing, and it sounds super fascinating. I'm just going to bring it in context with, COVID-19 pandemic. I know it's not directly in your area of expertise, but in your view, are biotech products produced in South Africa being actively used in the country to boost the economy, for example, like the ones that you're talking about? If not, what needs to happen for this to actually happen?
Yeah. You see, I think the COVID-19 pandemic has demonstrated that South Africa has the biotech knowledge and expertise that we need to address our own health challenges. This pandemic, we have seen how the South African biotechnology sector has actively thrown its weight behind the global research development drive to combat the pandemic. And over the past year, the country's academic and research institutions, together with government and local companies as well, have shown impressive capability in the development of diagnostic kits, ventilators, and therapeutic regimens for COVID-19. We even have fully staffed centers available for clinical trials, So for me, the challenge in boosting the African bioeconomy has been the funding and the regulation and also the local manufacturing of products at large scale. And this cannot happen without the support of the government. If the last few months have taught us anything, I think it's that local manufacturing and supply of biotech products are as critical as the basic research that has been the main focus. So we've been focused. We know that we have the expertise. We know that we are able to produce the biotech products that are needed. We've seen it with this COVID-19 pandemic. And before then, we've had ample discussions around boosting the South African bioeconomy. So now we need to get to a point where there are regulations that say, if you produce these biotech products, we will help you to ensure that they meet international standards, and the government will ensure that these products are actively used in the country. And furthermore, there has to be funds that are allocated to the manufacturing products, to the local manufacturing of these products. Because as researchers who do the biotech research, even if we are able to do the research and show that we have products, we do not have the money for boosting the local manufacturing. Yeah. So it has to be government that comes in here. And if someone has to then, bring in private companies as well, it has to be government that regulates all this.
So basically, it starts at the top of this
It really does, because the researchers have shown that they have the expertise, they have the knowledge. I mean, during the COVID-19 pandemic, we were called upon to write proposals within a day, 2 days, a week, and researchers came to the playground. They came to the battlefield with all the arms that they had, and we showed that we are here, we are ready. So I think with that in mind, the government now needs to bring in the support and bring in also the funding, and the private sector as well needs to come into play here.
You spoke about COVID-19. So in terms of the research that you're doing, for example, do you have the backing of the government for you guys to scale these products that you're making in terms of previously, before COVID-19? Because we see that COVID-19 is the main issue at hand right now. But in the past, was there backing? Did that happen or did it not? Because I think if it didn't happen in the past, the pattern might repeat itself, and it might not come to the party.
I mean, I hope that the government has not just the government, but I hope that as all the stakeholders, so I'm talking academia, I'm talking regions, I'm talking government, I'm talking industry. I hope that we have somehow learned our lessons during COVID-19. As African countries, I think a lot of us became really anxious, and I could go to a point where we say we were scared because we saw how everyone was scurrying, in the race to get, the PPE that was needed for health workers, in a race to, and even now with the race to the vaccine, because we know, from history that we might be put at the back of the line when it comes to receiving, the tools that we need be able to fight the pandemic, right? Especially if they are coming from outside and we might not even have, the power to say, no, we want to be first. So these are lessons that we should learn to say, if we need PPE, let it be from our own country. Let us not be waiting for someone to say to us, we will eat. And let us not be waiting for it to be given to us at exuberant amounts, So these are the lessons that we should be learning right now. And these are the lessons that should be guiding us in what we have to do in future. To say, if we have researchers in academia, in a research organization, even people who just, someone who was who studied science and is now trying to build up their own company, if they say, listen, this is what I have developed, they need to be given a chance to showcase what they've been developed, to be given funding, to be able to see if this is a product that can be locally manufactured and be able to serve the community in some way or other.
I hope that it does happen, and I hope it's successful, because we need it to be successful, actually, our lives.
Yes, we do. We really need it. I mean, it's not all doom and gloom, with our government, because we know they do fund a lot of the basic research. It's time for the research, to impact the community. I think that's the take-home message. Government has been putting a lot of money into, education. It's been putting a lot of money into the basic research. So we need to see all this basic research come out into real life as products.
Yeah, let's be hopeful in that manner. I just want to backtrack a little bit, because you can hear how passionate you are about getting the research and having it affect people on the ground. So you are in industry, as I think we can classify it like that. You're not in academia. And I just wanted to ask you that, what was a major motivating factor for you to be like, this is where I want to be at? Because, there's always that thing, like after you get a PhD, do you stay in academia? Do you branch out?
Yeah.
I need to look for a job. It's so stressful. So for you, was this always sort of in the back of your mind that I want to leave and get a job, or was it by chance? I'm quite interested to know that.
Yes, I think landing at the CSIR firstly was by chance, because I started working at the CSIR as an intern in 2009. So I finished my undergrad, and it was, I couldn't afford to do a master's full time. I needed to go and work. So when I got an internship which paid, it was like, okay, great, I have an internship that pays. And then I landed in a research organization. So then after doing an internship for a year, I conducted my research for my master's at the CSIR. So then I decided to take a sabbatical leave for 4 years to join academia while doing my PhD, even though it wasn't South African academia. So to be honest, with the CSIR as a research institution, I get the best of both worlds, because we have a lot of collaborations with different South African universities. And I also get to work with students. I also get to supervise students doing postgrad studies in universities. But the motivating factor for me to stay with the research institution, after I got my PhD, and even now after the PhD and after working here, there's always at the back of your mind the what next, whenever you're working in an institution or even in academia, there's always the what after your PhD. So for me, the motivating factor to stay at the CSIR is commercialization, because I'm always thinking about, as Africans, we need to ensure that the research we work on does not sit on shelves, but make an impact on the society we live in. I think I've said this quite a couple of times in this interview, but it really, I'm passionate about And the position that I am in now with the CSIR, as I said, I work with different stakeholders. So with academia, I work with industry, I work with government, and us as a research institution. So we try to work with all the different stakeholders and to try and see how best we can commercialize research, not only research that's done by us, but also, like I said, we have collaborations with academia. So to take their research further to get it to commercialization. So for me, that's been the motivating factor to stay within the industry.
I love that. I was going to give you the option to be like money. Money could also be the motivating factor. But
I don't know. I think that when it comes to STEM, I mean, I always say I don't, as a young researcher, I don't want to shy away from the wishes that I have, and the kind of life I live, and paint a picture of I'm a scientist, I'm about impacting the community. Because at the end of the day, when I walk away from that, when I go to sleep in the evening at the end of the day, there are dreams and there are wishes and there are places where I see myself. So I don't even want to shy away from saying researchers should be earning more money. And that's something, that's a conversation that I always want to have with the stakeholders. That can we get more money now that we have PhDs? We study so hard, we do so much work. We do work even outside of the line of work that we are given, So I never shy away from the conversation of money. Trust me. I never shy away from it. It's about the passion, yes, but the money has to come.
No, definitely. And I think that's always that thing that also as a young researcher, it's always something that's always in the back of your mind. There's limited funds, and then there's also all of those things where you can't necessarily, some scholarships or some opportunities limit you to actually work to get more money. But like you said, at the end of the day, you go home, you are a person who needs necessities,
So this conversation needs to be had. And if we have to have it over and over and over again, then so be it, until there is an ear that listens.
I hope so. Because you're right. It's important. It's important, and I think it's also some of those conversations that need to be had with people who are coming up into these fields. Because as much as you can say that I want to impact the world, let's be real for a second. Things are expensive. You have rent to pay, you have food that you need to buy, and it's pretty frustrating. But I think I love the fact that you are very candid about it, and especially when
I have a little boy who wants to fly. Hello. Exactly. So it's true, but it's also, I love also that you said that for you it's the reason that you went kind of in between, like you said, that you get to still be involved in the collaborations and you get to be involved in supervision, but it's also that you want to make sure that these products are not just papers in a journal, that people actually benefit from that. How has that been experience in terms of working with these various stakeholders in your day-to-day life? Has it been receptive to the advice from the people who are actually doing this research? Yes, I think with the research institution, it's about the mandate and the vision that CSIR has. So the company as a whole is driving that vision. So it makes it easier even for an individual, because you are surrounded by people that support, the vision of this is where we want to see South African research going. So you're having the conversation with like-minded people. And when you even go out there, to other stakeholders like the government and other industries who will be funding this research, that you have the support of the company. That even when they come to the table to for discussions, they already know that this is what you'll be driving, this is where you are driving the discussion towards. So I think it makes it easier than having to start from scratch, where, you are the one that's just standing up and saying, this is what I'd like to see, but you don't have the backing of, everyone else that surrounds you. So I think for me, this is what I say, this is the motivating factor for me staying, because the conversations that we have and with the company as a whole is around commercialization, industrialization of research.
Oh, that's fantastic that, it is the goal of the company, and it's beautiful that you are in that space. And I think also in terms of research nowadays, it's got that whole transdisciplinary approach in terms of not just working in a silo as scientists, but you're actually engaging with these various people, and it's beautiful that you are at the center of it.
Yes, most definitely.
Yeah. So also, away from the work that you do in your day job, I know, and the people who know you from the Twitter street know that you are very passionate about the success of young Black women in STEM. So now I just wanted to know why is this a thing for you? Why is this the cause that you push? And in answering that, I'm going to throw a little spanner in the works, because I think there are those people who are like, oh my word, women in STEM, hashtag, who's been saying this, what about the boys? We've been pushing this agenda of the women agenda, and some people might say, oh, the feminists are taking over. So I want you, when you're answering this, to please tell me your why. Why do you think that this is still important for us to do?
That's true. And like I said, I'm a mother to a boy child, and I want the best for my child. But with that being said, I cannot ignore the injustices around the system, not just in South Africa, but globally, when it comes to access and opportunities for young Black women in STEM. The fact that we recently just had an article that was published in Nature, citing that with supervisors or leaders in STEM, it just shows you how much work still needs to be done to recognize the role and the impact that women make in STEM. Nobody ever doubts the capabilities of men as scientists, but with women, and more especially with Black women, you have to prove yourself over and over again. I think this is also the reason why I always tell of my experiences on Twitter, I always tell of my wins, when it comes to trying to promote young Black women in STEM. And I regard myself as one as well. So I always, count my wins and share it with the Twitter world. And in fact, share it with the world at large when I've been able to win in promoting myself as a young Black woman in STEM. And I always share the failures where you're trying to get ahead, but, there are just these barriers that are stopping you. Because, people must know. That's why I say I'm very candid in my talks, I feel like we try to shy away from saying things. We try to be diplomatic, and then no progress is made. And we ask ourselves, who is to blame when there is no progress? But we need to take a little bit of it for ourselves. I understand how hard it is. Trust me, I know. And I never try to shame or try to force people to speak out when they are in positions where they feel that, they have been sidelined, or where they feel that they have been oppressed, because I understand how hard it is. But rather I encourage, that people should speak out, that we should always, make our voices be heard. I know that I may not be at the pinnacle of my success, but I have decided that the little success that I have, and whatever voice comes with the success that I have as a senior scientist, I will use it to promote young Black women in STEM. And I always think about what kind of support I needed, or what kind of support I still need now as a young Black woman trying to access opportunities and to succeed in my research. And I try to be that kind of support for other young Black women.
I love that. And you are. I mean, having firsthand interactions with you, like I said, on Twitter, I think it's very important to have people like you who tell it like it is. Not everybody is open and wants to share, but I think the fact that we have individuals of you who at your level are able to say like, hey, this happened to me and this is how I overcame it. It kind of helps the people who are still up and coming to kind of create that little roadmap for them to maybe not repeat those mistakes, or if they do, how they can overcome it. So I think I'm also like a woman in STEM girl, you know that. So
we need to be that. We need to be that, so that at some point we the cycle stops.
Yeah, and I was really hoping for you to bring up that article, and I'm glad that you did, because even when you saw the conversations, in particular from white males, you saw that they didn't see anything wrong with it, and it's quite shocking, actually.
Exactly. Yeah, and the term research can be used to oppress people. It can be used to support systems that we know are not working for certain demographics. And then we know all you have to do is call it research. So I can call Anne whatever, I can say she's not capable. I can say, she doesn't deserve to be a PhD candidate. I can say whatever, as long as I say research shows, then it's okay. And that's why we need to call it out. What led you to doing this kind of research in the first place, when you could have used all the resources and all the funds and all the, the position that you have to do research that could lead to the betterment of society, or that could lead to women having more access and opportunities, but you chose to use your resources to do this specific research. So it says a lot about what you are trying to achieve. It's not just research. We cannot say things about people and call it research.
Yeah, it's that little blanket that is used to cover everything. Like, oh no, but research says. And
exactly.
Like once you think that, you're like, oh, okay, then it should be right,
Yeah, because it's research. It's not my opinion. It's research.
Yeah, it's research, and it's like, okay, cool, we'll do it. And then you have people who publish it, like big publications like Nature. So of course, then it carries even more weight. And
exactly.
Yeah. So this is a conversation that we could have forever. But while we are on this topic, I just want to ask you then, what advice would you have to a young Black woman in STEM? Given all of these challenges that might be ahead of them, what advice would you give to them to kind of navigate it better?
Yeah. No, I think one thing that I didn't do earlier on in my career, which I think, and I think one thing that made me aware of how much I needed this was social media. Getting a mentor or trying to interact with people who are already, in the field of study that you want to be in, because it helps a lot and it makes things easier. For now, I think while we're still having these conversations about, how as scientists, we need to be rewarded as well as people in other careers. The one thing that will help you would be the passion, of course, because it makes your work easier when you are all about what you are doing, when you know what the end goal is, when, it's something that you wouldn't, even if you were not, they always say if they took away the money, if you were not paid to do this, if you didn't get a consent for doing this, would you still do it? And if your answer is yes, then you know that, this is for you. But also, as I said, getting a mentor, interacting, even just on social media with people who are already in your field of study and asking for advice, asking for the how-to would really make it easier. We need to use the tools that are available to us nowadays. In our days, we didn't have that. I think I started being on social media later on in at the end of my master's. I mean, this shows how old I am, right? So but even recently, just after my PhD, I've realized how much it helps for me to have a mentor, for me to look up to people, for me to DM people, for me to just ask for people's email address. Some people even just share their personal number with you and, WhatsApp me anytime, So now that we have access to that, we need to use it in order to succeed in the different, fields of study that we want to be in.
Yeah, I love that advice. Like you said, that the world has gotten easy for us to communicate with people who we look up to.
It really has.
Yeah. And just I think the another thing is like also just putting yourself out there. It's scary, like, oh my word, Twitter, oh no.
I know. I think I saw something on Twitter yesterday where someone said when I started talking on this platform, I was talking to myself.
Yeah.
Now I have a little community. And that's what happens. You reach out to the people that are in the community where you find, yourself most suited to. And I think I also have my little community as well on social media. People that I know I can reach out to for advice. People that I know would put me on like you are doing right now,
Yeah. No, it's true. And I also attest to social media. I think like about a year ago, I didn't know the power of Twitter. And I hope that I think it's about how smart you use,
Yes, that's true.
You have to be smart because, yes, people will say it's a distraction. Yes, but I think it's how are you using it for it to be a tool, to be effective to you, because it's also a host of opportunities and, it's beautiful, and encouragement and support. And it's crazy how many people, I always say this, it's crazy how many people are actually willing to say yes when you ask them something. Like, it still blows my mind. Like,
yeah, absolutely, I agree. There's more people saying yes than saying no.
Yeah, definitely. So I hope people take that advice. And Doc, it's been fantastic chatting with you. I enjoyed it so much.
Oh man, I enjoyed it too. I mean, like I said, whenever I can use my voice to talk about the things that I'm passionate about, I always take these opportunities. And thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. And it's been wonderful.
It's an absolute pleasure. And for everybody else who is listening, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Root of the Science podcast with your girl and with an E. Until next time, goodbye.